Backmeister and her husband Joe. Ann and I have been in the same art club for 21 years. We figured it out yesterday. I've been there. You've been there longer? Ann is way better than I'll ever be because she's also an oil painter. She's been to see the painting of the real Last Supper. And it's your, Ann, would you say it's your interpretation of another artist who is very famous?
Yes.
Yes.
Da Vinci, yeah.
Yeah, so we're hoping to, we gave you all a copy so you could see if you have a pencil or pen, you might want to take notes around this because she's going to give you a very detailed description of why everything is what it is in this painting, which is over the top amazing. We didn't know this. Yeah.
Can I get a pencil? I don't have one.
You don't have a pencil.
There's some in the kitchen.
There's some in the kitchen? He knows where they are. He'll get you
Sure,
one.
of course, we'll get you with it.
It has recipes too, doesn't it? That's what kitchen's
We're off with it.
in the sink. Okay. Yeah, well, I think we'll just go ahead and get started, Ann. Take it from here.
Well, welcome, and please, if you can't hear me, raise your hand, and we can adjust the volume.
I forgot to say one thing, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So Ann's going to give a presentation followed by questions, and then we have a whole bunch of treats and desserts and snacks and stuff, and coffee and tea in the back. So we'll have that with our questions after, okay?
Yeah, wait till the end to ask me the questions, because I will lose my train of thought, so. Right?
I understand it.
All right, writers use words to tell a story. Da Vinci used paint. And the more I looked at this painting, I realized it is so much more than just a depiction of Jesus' closest friends and followers having a final meal before the crucifixion. This is the day before the crucifixion. So Da Vinci's Last Supper painting is the second most famous painting in the world ever. And I think you all know that number one is the Mona Lisa. Do you know that the Mona Lisa is worth $1 billion today? But unlike Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, the Last Supper painting is not in a museum, it's not hanging on the wall, and it doesn't have a frame around it. It is the wall of a dining room in the Senegal. It's a convent, it was a convent of the Santa Maria della Grazia Church in Milan, Italy. The wall painting is 28 feet wide, and it's very high up. The ceiling was very high, vaulted ceiling in the room where it was painted, and still is. The painting itself is about the size of that red wall that you have there, only a little bit longer. So 28 feet, it is really big painting, and the figures in the painting are life-size. So the room is a long and somewhat narrow room, not like this shape, but so that's the whole wall, and then there's another wall here, and then just the two walls. So it's a long, narrow, rectangular shaped room. So let's go back in time to the Renaissance. 4 years after Christopher Columbus discovered America, so that will help you to know when this was done. In the year 1496 or 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Okay, so this is 1496. Leonardo was commissioned to adorn the wall, the front wall, and to show the Last Supper. I didn't tell you to change the page.
You want to go next?
Yeah, go now. Next page. All right, this is the room where the painting is. But this is a photograph. It doesn't have a date on it. I think it's about a 100-year-old photograph. The original room did not look like that. I'm sure it didn't have paneling. I do know that the floor was lower by about 8 feet. So that picture, the painting, is very high up. So why was it painted? Well, the printing press was only invented a few years earlier. Therefore, there were no Bibles or much printed material, and therefore, there was no need to know how to read. Very few people knew how to read. Mostly it was the clergy or the very wealthy. And we learned about the Bible because we didn't have Bibles. The average person didn't have Bibles. We learned about the Bible from the clergy, from the sermons, from the homilies. And it was known that our brains remember images we see better than what we hear. You've heard the expression in one ear and out the other. And also you've heard one picture is worth 1,000 words. So they knew that, and the churches, and we also know that the religious pictures help you to focus prayerful thoughts, and it helps you to remember the Bible stories, because you've seen pictures of it. The magnificent old churches are adorned with statues and stained glass windows, all showing Bible scenes. And the artwork is a reminder. It's a teaching tool. Are you changing? I should be telling you. All right, so that's, you can see it's a long, narrow room. Okay, next.
About the chairs facing
No,
two directions.
we'll talk about that later. All right, here we are, Leonardo. Keep going. All right, well, leave it at that. The Last Supper was a very, very popular theme. Well, it's an important event in the church. So, even in the catacombs, did you get the first picture of the catacombs? Just go back one or two. No, they're backwards. There. In Rome, in the catacombs, they found this. Obviously, an early picture of the Last Supper. Go on. And then slowly advance that. All through the centuries, there have been many Last Supper paintings. And you see they are shown with their halos. Right, keep going. Keep going. See the halos. This is all pre-Renaissance paintings. Not much drama, just people sitting at a table. Keep going. There, again. Okay, now this is Leonardo's painting. You can see the difference. About Leonardo, next painting. He was a jack of all trades, a master of all trades as well. While the average IQ is 100 or 120, it is believed that his was over 200, 220 at least. He was an engineer, an inventor. He designed submarines, steam-powered cannon, flying machines. He always wished he could fly. Military weapons. He was an architect, chemist. He knew medical science. He was a scholar of anatomy, etc. But he was good at everything he did. And he wished he could perform miracles. His contemporaries were Michelangelo and Raphael, etc., many others. Now, at that time, Italy was not united. There were principalities. And the ruler of Milan, Lodovico Sforza, commissioned Leonardo to paint this in his memory. Go back to the next painting, Joe. Oh, no, the other way. Keep going. All right, this is so he asked him to paint this painting, and if you look up at the top, there are coat of arms. And that's the coat of arms of the Sforza family. It's as if they're brought to you by the Sforza family, brought to you by Procter and Gamble, and somebody had to finance this work. So, at the same time, next painting. All right, this at the opposite wall. So if the Last Supper is on that wall, at the opposite wall is a painting, a painting of the crucifixion. It was commissioned by the same people, the same Sforza family. They commissioned the artist Montalfano, and Montalfano used stencils to copy figures, and most faces looked alike. The horses looked like wooden horses, and he jammed everyone into the painting, including the Pope, St. Benedict, members of the Sforza family. He completed his painting ahead of schedule in less than a year, but it was a dud. And there are no books that are written about it. I tried to find out how much he was paid for doing it. I couldn't find it. On the other hand, just keep going forward. That's it. All right. On the other hand, Da Vinci drew from life. He had people pose for his sketches. As you can see, he walked around the town and found people who he felt would be appropriate. He made over 100 sketches composing the painting, and then of course he chose one. And then a great deal of time was spent composing the work. Keep going. You can see the sketches, they all exist today, over 500 years later. We still have these sketches. Keep going, keep going, keep going. All right, this is a more modern, if you went to Italy now, this is what you would see. The floor has been raised up. I want you to look at the windows, the upper, this window in particular. So as Da Vinci was looking at the blank wall, he noticed sunlight coming in and hitting this side of the wall. So he used that, and he made this be the light source for his painting. If you see, this side of the room is darker, this side is lighter, and most of the time this painting would be seen during the day because they didn't have electricity. So the painting would be seen during the day and the sunlight would be coming in. To make this painting look like a room, not a painting. That's why it doesn't have a frame around it. And the figures are life-size. But look at the depth. It looks like a room, and then it looks like there are people in there. It was interesting to me that he used the window to make it look even more real. So now we get into the genius of Leonardo. Close your eyes and think of the painting. And who do you see first? Who do you see when you think of this painting? I think everybody would say Jesus stands out. Let me just get a drink. All right, so why? Why do we look there? I've actually, we shouldn't be looking there because there's a lot of action going on at the table. Jesus is very still. He's just sitting there very still. Everybody else is jumping up, upset. Did you hear what he said? So normally you look where there's action. And the rabbits in your backyard know that if they stay very still, you won't notice them. But here, Jesus is very still, but you do notice him. In fact, he's the only one you notice. You really have to force yourself to look at the other people at the table. So you're going to find out why everybody is sitting at one side of the table. So in a few minutes. So why do we see Jesus first? Well, he's wearing red. And your eye always goes to someone who is, or to something that is red. And Leonardo knew that. He knew the color schemes and the color wheel. He not only put the red garment on Jesus, but the background behind through the windows you could see green. So red and green make the green next to the red makes the red even stronger. And this has been known for a long time, but think about why we have our traffic lights are red and green. Because if you made them another color, you might not notice the red light. Your eye will see red. And that's the first thing you're going to see. It just pops out. Our brains are like that to see red. And so that's why we have red lights instead of purple or whatever. So it's an attention getter, and the green strengthens the red. Another thing is, look at the size of Jesus. He's really too big. There are some apostles here standing up or almost standing up, but you don't really notice that he's too big. You just notice him. I see I'm standing, and look how much. Even if I bend over a little bit, I'm still quite a bit taller than someone who would be sitting, and yet he's at the same level as somebody who is standing. And that's another thing. Our eyes are drawn to something that is big. You would see the elephant before you saw the birds. Picture. All right. See, well, here you could see the line where Jesus is the top of his head. These over here, these apostles are standing, but they're at the same level as but you don't notice that, and that's the genius of Leonardo, that he was able to do this without making it look like he made a mistake. All right. So. Your eye just goes there. Why? Well, perspective. And this was the beginning of when it was starting to, he really pioneered this. And you can see how all these lines all point. See the tapestries? Point right to the forehead of Jesus. All these, you're not aware of it when you look at the painting, but yet, if you study it, you'll see there are lines even in the floor that go right to Jesus. I'll show you how he did it in a minute. He took a nail. Well, it was right here a minute ago. I don't know. But anyway, he took a nail and hammered it into the wall where the forehead of Jesus would be. And a long, long string. And this here it is. I'll show you. There.
long string.
And that's how he started, that's how he got the perspective. And now look at Jesus, next painting. His upper body forms a triangle. So this is where Jesus really, where Da Vinci really tells the story. There's a triangle here of Jesus. The upper part of his body forms a triangle. Is that the Trinity? The Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Then there's 3 windows. That again could be Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And have you noticed that these apostles are all in groups of 3s? Again, what is he telling us? He's telling a story. Well, let's go back to Jesus first. And while the others are Jesus is isolated at this table. There's a lot of people, and they're all on one side of the table, but he is all alone. And he's alone. If you know your Bible, you know that Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane alone while the apostles slept. He was alone before the ruling Jewish Sanhedrin. He was alone before Pilate with no one defending him, no advocate, no lawyer. He was alone carrying the cross, except for Simon. I'm sure there were other times when he was alone, when he should have had someone with him. So what else are we looking at? The picture is actually about the moment in time, immediately after Jesus very softly says, "One of you will betray me." And now everyone at that table knew what that meant. Tomorrow I die. That announcement moves across the room like a tsunami, an emotional shockwave, a bombshell. The apostles were well aware of what that meant for Jesus, but also for them. They were all martyred except for John. So in this painting, we see their reaction. We feel the full range of emotion. Some of them are disbelieving. This one over here is obviously saying, "Is it I, Lord?" Then you see Thomas. It has to be Thomas because he's got his finger in the air like this. Is he saying, "How do you know this? Did your Father in heaven reveal this to you?" Or we know his Thomas because Thomas is wanted after the crucifixion, after the resurrection, he was the doubting Thomas who wanted to put his finger in the wounds of Jesus. And you can see disbelief. You can almost, if you look at this painting really carefully, you almost know what each one is saying. Peter, we know it's Peter because he has a knife in his hand. And you know he's going to be, that very evening, he will cut off the ear of the high priest's soldier. And he also, if you look carefully, he has the keys in his pocket, keys to the kingdom. We know this is Andrew because he looks a lot like Peter, and they were brothers. This is Bartholomew. Okay. Then sitting next to Jesus, this is not Mary Magdalene. Don't let Hollywood tell you that this is Mary Magdalene. It is not. It is John, the Apostle John. In all the other Last Supper paintings, the Apostle John is always shown sitting very close to Jesus. We know that John was at the foot of the cross on the next day, Friday. And he was with Jesus' mother, Mary. So he instead of painting John as a young, maybe a teenager, since he was with Mary, the mother, he painted John to look like, I think, Mary, but Mother Mary, not Mary Magdalene. Hollywood wants you to think it was Mary Magdalene. Not. Da Vinci knew the Bible. He would never have left John out of the picture. So if that wasn't John, then where is he? He's nowhere else. So the artist grabbed your attention with the red and with the big figure of Jesus, the size of the painting, the colors, and to see the reaction of the apostles. He made you believe that instead of a painting on the wall, it is a room with real people and not cartoons, and emotionally charged people at that. Now the old question of why did he put everyone on one side of the table? Simply put, it was so that we could see the reaction, the body language, the gestures. We know what if you look carefully, you'll know what they were saying and feeling. You could almost hear the words, and people called it the painting that talked and described it as miraculous. Remember that Da Vinci wished he could perform miracles. And people, when they saw that's just what they thought. And seeing the back of someone's head, as you saw in the previous paintings of the Last Supper, was pointless. Personally, I think there is another reason why he put everyone on one side of the table. And we'll talk about that at the end. So Da Vinci knew how to show distance with color changes, and colors get grayer in the distance. Size of objects get smaller. Look at the tapestries, they get smaller. And the further back in the room, that's how he got you to look like it has depth. Instead, it's a flat wall. Jesus went to the jail, and he found the worst scoundrel to pose as Judas. Yeah, well, no, it's gotta go forward. Okay, this is a close-up of what's on the table. Do you see the spilled salt? This started the feeling that when people spilled salt, they would, it was a bad omen. Something bad was going to happen. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but all the Mediterranean countries, what they would do, if somebody spilled salt, they would take salt and throw it over their left shoulder to chase the devil away. And there is a hard-boiled egg. That's an egg is a symbol of a new life. So notice the bread, the roll is very small. Now why is it so small? These are big men who do a lot of walking and they need calories, but this was the Seder supper. This was, traditionally it was unleavened bread. And that's why we have our communion is unleavened. Okay, look at there's a bone here. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a bone, there's the lamb. And it was a young lamb. It's a small bone. The meat is off the bone. And that tells me that they had already eaten. Well, think about it. If you had heard if you were eating a supper with someone and they made a statement like that, I don't think you'd feel like eating after that. you'd be so worried. But that's why I think this statement came at the end of the meal, towards the end of the meal. You can see wine on the table, the salt especially. And, wait, no, go back one. Go back one. Now let's look at the tablecloth. Yeah, if you can see, the tablecloth it looks like a brand new tablecloth. It still has the folds in the tablecloth. It looks like a very good tablecloth. It has some sort of lace or embroidery, but definitely new. And again, this is a new way of worshiping. We're not going to slaughter the lamb anymore. So all the little details. Okay. And you notice that there are no halos on Da Vinci's. You know which one is Jesus. He didn't need to put a halo on him. Look under the table, there are 4 wooden horses. And my first thought was that meant that he wanted the apostles to go to the 4 corners of the earth and preach his words. But it could also be the 4 horses of the apocalypse. There are knots everything in this painting has a reason, and I think that might be a signature, a way of Da Vinci identifying himself as the artist, but I'm not sure about that. So Leonardo had mastered the physics of reason. This was like a scene in a theater. People who had never seen a photograph or a movie, this is over 500 years ago, neither a black and white movie or silent film, were suddenly seeing Technicolor, CinemaScope, and 3-dimensional. Imagine the reaction. Seeing it for the first time, it took their breath away. People were astonished and felt it was spectacular and called it miraculous. News about this painting spread quickly. Within 3 years, there's evidence that it was known in the Orient. Remember that there were no electronics, no news programs, only word of mouth. So in 3 years, for the whole world to know about it was something. The Lodovico Sforza, who financed the painting, was very pleased. And he had lunch 3 times a week in that room. He felt like he was dining with the apostles and Jesus. So it's the most important art of all times, both for its innovative approach and for the impact that it had on artists ever since. We still use his techniques today. Artists came from everywhere to copy and to learn. He used walnut oil and boiled linseed oil, and that's what people use today. I do it. So what really caught my attention at first were the tapestries, because I know that painting was very high up, and he had to build a scaffold and have it go up the ladder, which was a dangerous thing. It was a lot of work, and I think everything in that painting is there for a reason, because, why would he go take that risk for just to decorate something? It had a reason. Well, the tapestries there to show perspective, they do. Because they do get smaller as he's showing distance. See how they get smaller? First one is big, and then they get smaller. Why is one side of the room dark and the other side is light? Well, he's showing the light from the window. Remember I said the light is coming from the window, shining on that side. I think that maybe those tapestries represent, ones on the left might represent the Old Testament, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, the major prophets. They're fading a bit. They're on the darker side of the room. On the right, where the light is coming in from the window, they could be represent the evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So remember that the Jews ate the sacrificial lamb. I didn't know that. Maybe you did, but I didn't. So Jesus said, "Bless the unleavened bread," and said, "Take and eat. This is my body." The same with the wine. And he said, "Do this in memory of me." Now this is how I want to be remembered. So this is the first Holy Communion, and it's the first Mass. So I have some bad news about the painting. The pigments did not bind with the surface. This is not a fresco. A lot of people think it's a fresco. Fresco is wet plaster over a wall, and while the plaster is wet, you put the paint on. It's usually a water-based paint. And the paint and the plaster dries together and makes it permanent. Leonardo liked to try something new, always trying something new. So he used the oil paint. And within 20 years, the paint started to peel and mold formed. And it was not totally his fault in using the new technique. The building is in a low-lying area, and there were no dehumidifiers, no heat around the clock, but plenty of grease from the candles, the oil lamps, and from the nearby kitchen as well. Don't forget this was the dining room. Someone was hired to clean the painting and restore it. He worked behind a curtain until somebody noticed he was using acid on the painting to clean it, and of course he got booted out. Napoleon, during the wars, Napoleon occupied the city, and his men used the room as a stable for their horses. They threw darts and rocks and God knows what else at the painting while using the figures for target practice. And Napoleon's men did that also when they were in Greece. They did the same thing with the Sphinx. They used the Sphinx for target practice as well. Also, next painting. Next painting. Go. No, keep going. Okay. No, keep going. All right. We'll show you later. There is Napoleon's men cut a doorway into the bottom of the painting and cut off the feet of Jesus, if you can find that one. Anyone with the door. No. So the reason it was so, the door was very high because they wanted to get on the horse and go through that door to go into another room. Well, this is, you can see, this is the door. They cut a door. By doing that, they damaged the wall as well. All right, go back to the structure. Yeah, another one. Okay. In World War II, the Nazis occupied Milan. The British Air Force bombed the city and the building was hit. As you can see, badly hit. Miraculously, the painting was not destroyed, but it was exposed to the elements. for several years before the building could be rebuilt and repaired. After 55,000 hours of restoration by the Italian government, only 20% of the original painting remains. We went there and I was greatly disappointed that I could not see much of the details. So that's the bad news. You can see how this is where the painting is. They covered it with tarps, but don't forget they didn't have plastic then, and just blankets and things. His windows are still standing. They're still there even today. You can see the rubble. Another photo of this.
I think that's
No, the other way. Okay, look at the arches though. They're still standing even though the building was hit. And there was an arch, I forgot to tell you, there was an arch above where Jesus is sitting. In the background there's an arch. And I think that might also be a symbol of stability and strength. Okay, keep going. And this is what it looks like. Now, there's only 20% of the original paint is still there. And don't forget, Leonardo had to make his own paint. He ground up the elements, used the linseed oil, and it is 500 years over. 500 years. All right, there is good news though. In a remote old abbey in Belgium, a very large rolled up canvas was found. It is the exact copy and size of this painting. Outline sketches under the paint measure up exactly with the painting in Milan. Infrared revealed some of the work was done by Leonardo because there is no sketch under the paint of Jesus. It is in near pristine condition. And so it is known that King Louis of France wanted the painting, but he could not bring the wall back to France. It seems that the king had Da Vinci paint another original on canvas, same size, and it was hidden and forgotten about. They have found it now, and they may, I hope someday they'll display it. Okay, so we're getting to the end now. Okay, next one. Okay, there you can see the doorway. It didn't have to be that high, except they wanted to get on the horse to go through. Okay. All right, now there's one more thing. Remember I said I think there's another reason why we, everybody's seated at one side of the table. I go backwards. One. Yeah, okay. So this is a wall, and there's another wall here. So this painting takes up the whole wall. Now on that side, Peg will show you. So there's where Peg is standing, there's like she would be like in the kitchen area. There's a wall there and a doorway. So if she walked into that room and there's the paint, try to imagine the painting is up on the wall. And as she walks in, the doorway. Walk in. Look at how Jesus is posed. If he looked straight ahead, he would see his own crucifixion, the other painting at the other end of the whole room. But he's not looking straight ahead, he's looking down. His head is down and slightly turned. Look. All right, wait, I'm going to find my place. As you enter, he's looking, then you look up at him. You can't help but look up at him because the red and your eye goes right there. He has his hand outstretched with his palm up, as if introducing himself. I am the Lamb of God. As if he's talking to you. And as you walk in, and he says, I am the Lamb of God. I am the sacrificial lamb. I am the bread of life. I have come to make things new. Blessed are you who come to the supper of the Lamb. And it seems as if he's beckoning you to come to me, all who are burdened, and I will give you rest. See, I have not forgotten you. I have carved you in the palm of my hand. Take and eat this bread, for this is my body. Take this cup and drink, for this is my blood, that I will shed for the sins of the world. I have prepared a place for you here with me. So this is another reason why no one is sitting at that side of the table. It is a place for us.
Yeah.
I have a question. Can you go, Joe, to the picture that had the names of all the apostles on it? And
Yeah.
because I always thought Judas was on the far right end of the table, but that you said that's Simon the Zealot.
Well,
In-
Judas has,
He had the bag
Judas is holding the money purse. You can see him holding the money purse. He had just dipped his hand in the oil with Jesus. So here he is. He's almost recoiling. He's recoiling. You can't see in this picture, but his hand is where the oil was. And he's holding in his hand the money purse.
Okay.
So we know that's Judas. There's Bartholomew. Here's Andrew and Peter. They look somewhat alike. James the Minor.
Little James.
And that's, of course, John. And then of Thomas with the finger. There they are.
point to Judas and point to
And right here. He's sitting at the same side of the table, but he's recoiling. It looks like he's backing away from the apostles and Jesus. You have a question? Yes.
Given this is the second most popular image in the world, would you guess why Belgium wouldn't display that canvas print?
They held on to it all these years. All I can think of is maybe Da Vinci became very friendly with the King of France. And the king really wanted this painting, but there was no way he could bring the wall back to France. So he must have painted another painting. And then who knows what happened? Did the king die? There were always battles and wars and things, and they rolled it up, and it was a remote little abbey in Belgium, and things happened. They forgot about it.
But they're not displaying it.
No, and I don't understand that because they're thinking of restoring the one the painting in Milan. They're thinking of restoring it, and it's going to cost a fortune. And still, you're not going to have the paint. Paint is gone. 80% of the original paint is gone. Yes.
How long it took him to paint that?
Okay, that's a good question. It took him 4 years.
4 years?
4 years. The other painting at the other side of the room was done in less than a year. But there isn't one book about that painting. It's just an ordinary painting. But yeah, it took four whole years. But he worked slowly, but he was very meticulous. And I don't think he started to paint until probably almost a year. I mean, just thinking about what he wanted to say in this picture. He really said, I didn't do as good a job as I could have, but he really says a lot in there. And I'm sure if you look carefully, you'll find out the things that I've missed. Yes.
So I've had people argue vociferously with me that they saw this painting in the Louvre.
No.
And I tell them it's on the wall
You
in
can't
a
move the
convent in
painting.
Milan, right? And the other thing, my other second part of my question is that, okay, I mean, Napoleon was still before photography, and before that door was put there. Where do we get these good images of the entire painting that are now reproductions, so that we know what it originally was?
All right, immediately after, that's a good question. Immediately after the painting was finished, and word got out very fast. I mean, this ushered in the high Renaissance. All the artists were very interested to see what he had done. They came, they visited, they brought the paints with them, and they set up their easels and they copied his work. So we have all the paintings that you see are, and that you have at home, are copies of another artist who just set up his easel and copied his work. But they learned from that. They learned, that's how you really learn. I mean, you know, if you're you want to play the piano, you play somebody else's composition. And you don't compose music the first time you sit down at the piano. And the same thing with the paint. You copy somebody else's painting, you learn how to mix the colors and how colors react, one color reacts to another. This was a wonderful composition, and one which planned down to every detail. So they copied, and then as copies and copies and copies, and then now we have photography. But no, it's not in the Louvre. The Mona Lisa is in the Louvre. And somebody, I don't know if you know this story, but the Mona Lisa, two men from Italy, they stole the Mona Lisa painting. And for 2 years, it was lost, and we didn't know where it was. And the Louvre, they had more people going to the Louvre just to look and see where the Mona Lisa painting was. Yes.
You talked about his outstretched hands and you know, the one of him welcoming us. Why is his other palm facing down? Do you know?
Yes, he, again, from the Bible, in the Last Supper, Jesus said, the one who has dipped the bread in the oil with me is the one who will betray me. So he's showing you that one hand is down. You're right, it's facing down. He has just dipped the oil in his hand, his bread, in the oil. But so has Judas. So again, he's telling a story. The other hand is outstretched, like I said, beckoning you to come and sit at the table. So now you know why there's two reasons why everybody's sitting on one. There's been a lot of jokes about that. Why is everybody on one side of it? They're all squeezed in. And that's another thing. When, you know, picture yourself at the dining room table with your company, your family, and somebody says, everybody on one side of the table. Is going to create a lot of tension. And he wanted you to feel the tension. Now, if you have to sit real close to people at the dinner table and your elbows are going to be, you know, he wanted you to feel the stress and see it and feel it. Yeah.
So, what kind of money did he make for that painting?
All right. How much did he get to do this painting? All right. Leonardo received a villa and a vineyard on the outskirts of Milan, and he owned it until his death. And then I don't know what happened to it. Any other questions?
Where's he buried?
He's buried, he died in France. He became very friendly with that King Louis XIV, I think. And he died in France, and he was buried there. And his body is still there. It was moved to the church, but it's still there.
Do we know how old he was?
Yeah, he was 67 years old when he died, and he died of a stroke. And I guess I didn't say that, but on his deathbed, his words were, "I have sinned against God and man because my work I did not achieve the quality of the work that I could have or should have." So he regretted what he did not do. Yeah, he didn't feel like his work was good enough. Yes,
You had said before that there were bones on the table, so it looked like they had maybe finished their meal.
right.
And none of them looked like they are eating. It's like he had made his
Statement.
statement, and they were all getting up, and now they are all just discussing that statement. It looks like this side of the table is also set. Of course, it's still probably set for us, but,
Right. Yeah,
they
I
look
think,
more
I
like
think
they're
that,
discussing rather than,
well,
Oh,
I
eating
think they
on
had
the
eaten,
side.
and I think that Leonardo probably thought, if that statement was said in the beginning of the meal, no one would be able to eat.
mhm.
That makes sense to me.
And Moses did command the Jews, they had to finish the lamb.
They had to finish what
That's part of the Passover, how he described it. You have to finish it. And if you don't have enough people to eat a whole lamb, bring the neighbors over, because you have to consume the entire lamb.
Okay. But the lamb is very small, isn't it? It's not a big animal like
A yearling lamb is actually pretty big. You'd
Is
be
it?
surprised.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know
They're
that.
like this tall. Yeah.
Okay.
My daughter had them. I was surprised how big they were in a year.
Oh,
Yeah.
Two legs of lamb and chops and.
yes.
Did Leonardo da Vinci ever sang or put his initials on his drawing?
I think at this time, in this period, people didn't sign because, they didn't sign their names because nobody could read. I mean, 99% of the women could not read. Some of the men could, but you know, it depends. They're very wealthy, maybe clergy, like they knew how to read. But if people couldn't read, what's the point of signing? He did put, some people say he put a knot in his painting so that some people would know that was him. And Da Vinci just means he came from a little town called Vinci. So they didn't have last names. Yes.
Yeah, did you say Jesus is avoiding looking at a painting across the room?
Well, that's my interpretation, because if he looked straight ahead, he would be looking at the crucifixion painting. But he's not. He's looking down towards where the door is. And you're coming into the room, and he's looking down as if to say, come to me. I have prepared a place for you. That's my interpretation. I didn't read that anywhere.
Okay,
But I have seen the painting.
but it was done before the actual crucifixion.
No.
No, the crucifixion was finished
Oh, right.
3 years before.
Oh, yeah, they started the paintings at the same time, but Leonardo took almost a year to plan the picture before he even started to paint it. Whereas the other artist, he was using stencils, he didn't draw from life. His figures in his paintings look like paper dolls, years ago, flat cartoons, like everybody has the same face. The horses, I think I said, looked like hobby horses. They didn't look like real horses. But, Leonardo took his time in trying to make everything look perfect, make it look like it really looked like a room. It didn't look like a painting. It looked like a room. It was life-size. It had depth. You could see outside the window, and they said you could see even a cathedral out in the distance. Yeah.
So did he have education? They didn't even read.
That's a good question. No, as far as I could tell, I looked this up, and he had no formal education. He taught himself. Someone may have taught him to read when he was a little boy, but he was not allowed to go to any schools. They didn't have many schools at that time, but if they had a university, he would not be allowed because his parents were not married. So he was an illegitimate child, what they called an illegitimate child. And so he would not be suitable to go to the university. But people saw his talent, and his father, although his father was, his father had an affair with a peasant woman. So he was not his father was not a very wealthy man, but he had some, you know, I don't know if he was like, would you call him a lawyer or something, but he was.